Hey guys, I'm trying a new way of filming. I usually do it on my little vlog camera that I use, but I'm actually recording it on my laptop this time to see if it would be better quality. I'm not sure how well it'll work, but we'll find out. So yeah, basically I wanted to do a story time about me being too nice, if that makes sense. I mean, the title will give it away, but like, yeah, if that makes sense. So basically, it's stories about times that I was screwed over, but I was too nice to say anything about it because I'm an unconfrontational person. So the first one starts when I was in kindergarten. Yeah. So basically, I was in a class with a woman who was very bitter and like my mom hated her. I don't really remember much about it, but I remember this one specific thing very, very clearly. Basically, I had a teacher, we'll call her Miss Red. Okay, you'll see why that's important later. Okay, so we'll call her Miss Red. So basically in kindergarten, like, you know, every single little kid loves to color, but they never color inside the lines. They use random colors. Like, they literally just scribble all over the page. You understand that, right? Like, literally every kid does that. Like, nobody colors inside the lines. It's not a big deal. Like, nobody does that. You get that, right? Like, that makes sense, right? Correct? Yeah, I'm good. Like, that makes sense. Like, you know little kids do that. Okay, so I was 5. I'm a little kid. Like, I don't know how to color inside the lines. Like, what are you talking about? Like, whatever. So I grab a freaking red crayon, and we had to color in this little thing for, like, a project that we were doing. And so I colored in all the pictures red and, like, scribbled, like, not inside the lines, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, oh, okay, Miss Red, I'm done. And so in kindergarten, you have, at my school at least, you have, like, this thing that, like, pretty much, like, portrays your behavior. And so it, like, the way she had it set up kind of looked like a stoplight. So it was like green on top, yellow, and then red. And so like green was like you're good for the day, yellow was like you were kind of bad, but like you weren't like terrible, and red was like you like should like be restrained or something, I don't know. And so basically that's how it works. So I hand in my thing and I'm like, oh, Miss Red, here, I'm done with this. And she goes, the world is not red, and made me move my card, my little, like, or it was a clothespin, from the green circle to the red circle because I colored it red. Because I colored it red. I was 5 years old. Like, am I like, so like as a 5-year-old, I was like, what? So I literally went home to my mom. My mom was like, what happened? Like, why are you on red? Like, and I literally told my mom the story, and she was like, and like my mom already didn't like this teacher, and like I had a rough year that year. Like, I missed one of our field trips that we went to, like the park, because I was like, I had the flu, I was throwing up everywhere. That was a rough year. But like the lady who was my teacher, Miss Red, was always on the phone because like there was something going on with like her son or something like that. So she was literally always on the phone, like in our class while she was supposed to be teaching us. And I get like kindergarten isn't that hard to teach and like it doesn't really matter, but like still, you know, like, anyways, so that's the first story. And that's not really like I was too nice to say anything, but like I could have like argued my case, I guess. I mean, I was 5, so what am I gonna say? Like, oh my god, all 5-year-olds like color red. But like, you know, but like neither my mom and I like said anything. We just kind of dealt with it, you know? Okay, so the next story happens when I was in 4th grade, and so here's the backstory. So I liked this teacher, but she was a little weird, and she was like, looking back on it, she was very immature for a teacher, and I'm guessing she was probably like in her very early 20s. Like, I wouldn't, like, she's probably like 22 maybe, like she's very early 20s, probably just got out of college, like whatever, to be a teacher. So basically, my great grandma had just died, and so my mom was very close with her, and so we were like at her house the entire week, like spending time with her. And then after she died, we were spending time with family at her house and all that stuff. And so my actual grandparents lived like 5 seconds, like literally right across the street from her, so we would stay over there with them and like all that stuff. We were spending the entire week there. Like, family was coming in town from like everywhere. So it was a busy week, and the funeral was then, so like I had been missing some school because I was out. So I had a lot of makeup work. So basically what we did was, whenever we had makeup work, we would take like a little like magnet clip and clip it, because we had metal desks, we would clip it to the side of our desk so that we wouldn't forget that we had makeup work, or it was right there, so that if our teacher wanted to know if we had makeup work, she wouldn't have to like ask us or like rummage through our desks or whatever, or she'd just look on the side of the desk, if that makes sense. So where I live, we have these things called AR points, and it's basically, like, I don't know if everybody has it, but basically it's like when you read a certain book, you have to take a test on it. It's just like generic plot-based questions, like, you know, it's very easy, but basically, like, if you pass the test, you get so many points for reading that specific book, and like, the books, like, differ. So, like, if it's a harder book, you get more AR points or whatever. So everybody, like, I don't know if everybody has this, but we definitely have this where I live. So, by the way, this is all when I was in public school. I currently go to private school, so this is still in public school. So basically, we were doing an AR thing, and so our teacher, we'll call her Miss Massachusetts, because that's where she was from. So basically, so we'll call her Miss Massachusetts. So basically, so I had missed, like, as I said, because my great grandma had just died, and we were spending a lot of time with family and all that stuff because my grandma had just died. So anyways, I had a lot of makeup work, and it was clipped to the side of my desk, but it was on the side where she couldn't really see it, which, like, wasn't intentional. Like, I was, how old are you in 4th grade? Like 8, maybe? Like, maybe even younger than that. Like, I was, like, it wasn't intentional, and I was always a good child. Like, I never got in trouble at school. I had never gotten my card flipped or, like, anything like that from, like, the red to the green, except for that one time that I freaking colored the entire picture red. Like, God forbid I be a 5-year-old and color something red. Like, anyways, so I was, like, always a good kid. Like, I never caused any trouble. My mom and I were really good friends with the vice principal. My grandma, the one who had, like, my actual grandma, it was really good friends with the vice principal because she taught at the sister school to this school and, like, all that stuff. So, like, we were very involved, and, like, everybody knew me. Like, it's a very small town. Like, everybody knew me. I was, like, a good kid. Like, you know, our teacher decided to go to, like, the dollar store to get, like, stuff for us to be able to like, buy with our AR points. So basically she just bought, like, a bunch of crap. It was, like, stamps and stickers and, like, stuff like that, you know, so that we could, like, buy it with our AR points. So, like, however many AR points you had, like, you could have, like, 5 AR points to buy, like, a stamp or something like that. So we were doing that, and so you, like, it was like an auction, actually. So, like, you got to bid for it or whatever. So basically, she told us that we couldn't, like, do our thing, our AR thing, until we had finished all of our makeup work. And so I actually asked her, like, I was like, oh, I have a lot of makeup work, but can I still do it? Like, I remember asking her that. And she was like, yeah, you can still do it, just, like, when I call on you. So I was like, okay. So I wasn't able to do it as frequently as other kids, but, like, I still got to do it. And so that's happening. So as we're doing the auction, I'm working on makeup work, and it's, like, very evident that I'm working on makeup work because everybody else is just, like, sitting around and talking, and I'm doing my makeup work, which wasn't freaking hard. It was, like, I don't even know, probably, like, grammar, like, what's a verb, like, something like that, you know? So basically that. So then as we're working, she ends up, like, walking around the room or something like that and seeing how much makeup work I had clipped to my thing, and so she gets, like, pissed. Like, her face, like, turns red, and she starts yelling at me, like, why are you doing this instead of, like, why are you doing the AR instead of your makeup work? Like, you need to get this makeup work done. Like, this is unexcusable. You have not been doing anything this entire week. Like, you haven't even been to school. Like, this is ridiculous. So she makes me stand up and go to her office, which is, like, in the side of, like, her, like, near, like, it's, like, a different room inside of her room, if that makes sense. She makes me stand up and go in there and call my mom while she's at work. Like, my mom's a doctor, so, like, she can't just, like, randomly come to the phone whenever she needs to, like, unless it's an emergency, like, with me or my brother or whoever. Like, she can't just, like, randomly, like, get calls throughout the day. So, like, my mom's like, what is going on? So she literally calls my mom and, like, is, like, telling her how awful I am and, like, I'm such a bad child, and my mom gets pissed at her. Like, my mom came in so clutch during this. So my mom is literally like, I am at work. This is inexcusable. You do not need to be calling me about this. Like, this is ridiculous. My daughter is a good student. Her great-grandma had just died. Like, we have been at the funeral. We have been at her house. We have been consoling my parents because it was my mom's dad's mom, if that makes sense, because my great-grandma. Anyways, so it was my mom's grandma on my mom's dad's side. Yeah. Anyways, so, like, she's, like, freaking yelling at this teacher, and the teacher is like, whatever, and then makes me talk to her. And so I'm, like, I'm in tears. Like, I remember crying. Like, I was sobbing. And, like, the room is, like, right there, and it's, like, a room inside of the classroom. So like everybody in there, like all my friends can hear me crying. Like it's ridiculous. So I'm literally crying like, Mom, I didn't do anything. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'll give back all the AR stuff that I bought. Like, whatever. Anyways, so then later that night or like the next day, my mom emails the vice principal and is like, this is inexcusable. Like, you know how good my daughter is. They're like really good friends with my family. Like, she knows my mom, she knows my grandma, she knows like everybody. Like, we're like very good like friends. So she like emails the vice principal, and the vice principal's like, that's ridiculous. Like, that's obviously not in your control. Like, I'm so sorry to hear about your great grandma. Like, blah 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 blah. So basically then the next day my mom gets a full out written email and a phone call from my teacher saying, like, apologizing about everything. And this is like all after like I had been embarrassed as like crap and like had a freaking sucky week because my great grandma died, and then I cried in front of my entire class. But like it's fine. I couldn't really argue my point in that case because like she's my teacher and I can't argue with her. Like, so now is another story that just gets me so mad whenever I tell it, and like it's not as much anymore, but like still. Basically, I actually in the same class that I just told you about, there was this guy, and his name, we'll say that his name is Chad. I don't know where that came from. But anyways, we'll say his name is Chad. So basically, I had a crush on Chad, like, the entire year. And so eventually, during, like, the middle of the year, he was like, hey, do you want to be my girlfriend? And I was like, oh my god, yeah! So, like, it was one of those, I was in elementary school. I was in 4th grade. So it was, like, one of those, like, you say that you're dating, but, like, you never do anything because you're, like, 8 years old. You know what I'm talking about? Like, you're like, oh, that person's mine. Like, you can't date them, but, like, you don't even talk because, like, you're too embarrassed to say anything to them. You know what I'm talking about? Like, the middle school relationships? Yes. Anyways, so basically Chad and I, like, dated in 4th grade when I was, like, 8 years old. I don't even know if that's how old you are when you're in 4th grade. I would assume not. I assume you're probably, like, older than that. Anyways, it doesn't matter. I moved schools in 5th grade and moved houses in 6th grade to move closer to my new school. It wasn't that far. It's only, like, 25, 30 minutes away, depending on, like, where you, like, how much traffic and stuff. So basically, what happened was I ended up making an Instagram and getting back in touch with people that I used to go to school with, and one of those people ended up being Chad. So basically, he had another friend whose name was the same. Call him Tad. Sure. So anyways, they were really good friends. I knew both of them, and I dated Tad in kindergarten, which is very ironic because I told both of those stories today. So I dated Chad and Tad. So they were really good friends, and so I got back in touch with them, and they, like, were texting me and calling me and everything, like, oh my god, I totally forgot about you, like, we miss you, like, blah, 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 blah. And so, anyways, they both ended up kind of, like, flirting with me. So I was in 8th grade, and then the story continues going into my freshman year. So this is probably, like, in 8th grade. So basically, I'm like, oh, yeah. So, like, I ended up flirting with both of them. And I was babysitting one day, and I was talking to Chad. And he was like, oh, if Tad asks you out, are you going to say yes? And I was like, well, that depends. And he was like, well, what does it depend on? And I was like, if you ask me out first. So I was telling this to Chad. So yeah. So he ended up being like, oh, okay, and, like, getting the hint. And he asked me out. So I was like, yeah. So we ended up dating again. In middle school, like, we never hung out. He never even asked me to hang out. And we dated for, like, a week, maybe. Like, it was stupid. Like, we barely talked. I ended up breaking up with him because, like, we never hung out because we lived too far away. It was, like, 25 minutes. Like, what are you talking about? So then I hadn't really talked to them for, like, a while, but then I ended up cheering, and I'm a cheerleader. I don't know if you know that or not. I cheered ever since 7th grade, so yeah. Anyways, I'm a junior now. I wasn't on varsity, but our varsity team was playing against them in football. So I went to the game to support our cheerleaders and to support our team, but ended up going back to the school that I used to go to meet with Chad and Tad. And I have another really good friend who goes there who, like, we used to be best friends. Like, we were inseparable. And, so yeah, like, we'll call her Bethany. We're not as good friends anymore. I think it's just because I moved, and so we don't really keep in touch as much anymore, which is really sad. So my friend Bethany had originally dated Chad after I had left. It wasn't a long relationship, and she was dating somebody else. So I was, like, texting her, and I was like, are you good with me dating Chad? You good, friend? You good? Everything. We were, like, flirting at the football game, and so we ended up talking again. This was, like, a year or so after. So he found me somehow on Kick, I'm guessing through like my phone number or something like that, and ended up like kicking me and being like really flirtatious, and I was like, boy, what are you up to? I ended up like realizing that I liked him again. He was single, I was single. It was ninth grade. We ended up talking, and he ended up like asking me out again, and so we dated for 5 days. 5 days. Like, we were planning to hang out. Like, we literally had like a thing. We were gonna go see a movie, like whatever. Like, we had it planned out. Like, I was gonna get my mom to drive me. He was gonna get his mom to drive him. Everything. We had it planned out. It was not for this reason that I'm about to freaking tell you. You better sit down. He goes, I just can't handle the long distance anymore. Do you want to run that by me again? Like, we had it planned out. At this point in my life, this is like, I feel like this is when everybody goes through like their really emotional, like, I hate my life phase. But that is definitely when I was going through it, and I thought I was the ugliest piece of trash ever. And I wasn't that bad. Peep an image of little me, the ninth grade me. I mean, I kind of was bad, but like, it wasn't that bad. Like, it could have been worse, you know? And so, like, when he talked to me, I thought I was, like, the baddest bitch on the block. Like, I was like, oh, yeah, like, I got a boyfriend now. Like, what are you talking about? Like, try me. This is that point of your life where you, like, think having a boyfriend is, like, the most important thing in the entire world. But, like, it's not. It's not the end of the world. So, like, yeah, if there's any, like, young viewers watching this, like, having a boyfriend is not that important. And I can tell you from experience that you will be so much happier being yourself and being on your own and just having really good friends than having a boyfriend. Later, the next day, he changes his kick name. The next day, he changes his kick name to a date with a heart. With a heart! And he was dating somebody else. The next day. Are you kidding me? I was so freaking upset about this. Like, it's not even funny. And, like, when we were dating or whatever, he didn't even put a date anywhere. He didn't even, like, say anything about us dating. Like, it was not evident that he was dating anybody at the time. And the next day, I was so heartbroken. And, like, my mom was like, what? This is a stupid boy. Like, you don't need boys. Actually, this is the one time that I was somewhat confrontational because I texted him. Because, okay, here's my logic behind this. Like, you don't just, like, randomly one day walk up to somebody and be like, hey, you want to date me? Like, you have to talk to them for a while. You can't just, like, walk up to someone and be like, you're my girlfriend now, okay? Like, okay. Like, no, that's not how it works. You have to talk to them for a while. So he's obviously talking to her while he was dating me, and he must have, like, been using me to, like, make her jealous or something, you know? Like, something of the sorts. So that was my rationale about it. So then I texted him, and I was like, if you didn't like me, you could have just said so. And I was like, if you liked her instead, like, I get it, just tell me. Like, and if you wanted to make her jealous, just tell me. Like, please, like, you know, and I hate people who lie all the freaking time. And he was such a freaking pathological liar. I can't. This story is the one that pisses me off the most because it is the most recent one. Backstory. When I started going to school, at the school that I currently go to now in 7th grade, my friend Emily was friends with a guy named so they were really good friends. Like, he liked her at the time, but she's never liked him. He's asked her out multiple times. She's literally always says no. She just doesn't like him. Little 7th grade me, like, had a crush on him for, like, the longest time, but I ended up befriending him and becoming really good friends with him. I didn't want to date him anymore. We were just friends, and I was good with that. 9th grade year, he started going to a different school, and I hadn't talked to him for a while, and 10th grade year is when we started, like, really getting back in touch together. So we ended up, like, talking more and everything, and so we became, like, really good friends, like, stuff like that. Like, we knew almost everything about each other, and I'm a very introverted person to where, like, I don't tell people how I feel a lot, which is also why I hate confrontation, because I hate, like, expressing my feelings, and also because I just hate confrontation. Anyways, so like, yeah, like, I ended up, like, telling him, like, a lot of things that other people didn't know about me. We were really, 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 really good friends. So I introduced him to Carson, and we were all really good friends. So it was Carson, him, and I. We'll call him Bob. Carson, Bob, and I, and we were all really good friends. So Carson, Bob, and I, we went to Warped Tour together. We went like everything. Like he wanted to get like some specific job, and so he needed like headshots for it. And so I take photography. I'm in honors photography currently, and so I ended up taking headshots for him and like editing them, everything, like putting them on a zip drive, everything for him, all that stuff. We were really good friends. So this is when my feelings started like developing for him again and like becoming more of like a I kind of like him kind of a thing. And so Bob and I ended up talking back and forth. He was like, who do you like? And I was like, oh, I don't know, and like lying about it because it was him. And I'm not going to be like, oh, I like you. Like, that's weird. Of course not. I mean, like, you can't just like be out there with your feelings. Okay, so we ended up describing who each other liked. And it was very obvious that I liked him, and like he kind of showed like that he kind of liked me, so I was getting the vibe that he liked me, and the person that he described sounded a lot like me. Bob liked my friend Emily originally when we were in middle school, and that's why I befriended him. So she is in photography with me, so I was editing the photos that I took for Bob in photography, and she realized that I was being very like girly about it and like giggling and be like, ah, he's so cute, like, oh my god, like, haha. So she like texted him and was like, dude, like, Ireland likes you. And he was like, what, really? Like, oh my god. And ended up texting me and being like, hey, we should hang out this weekend. So like I did everything in my power to like beg my mom to like go out with him. My dad had never been fond of this boy, and so, you know, like it had just been like, my dad had like, not that he didn't like him, but like he was like okay with us being just friends. But like when it started escalating, my dad was like, no, like this is not the right guy for you, which is like true. But yeah, anyway, so that happened. And so we went on our first date, and there's like a few shops like you can go in. There's like a few restaurants and everything. So we ended up just like walking around there. We got ice cream and like went to lunch and all that stuff. And so basically at the end of that, he kissed me sort of, but like it was like very like it was like a very lame kiss, and like it was very like weird. And so I was kind of like, okay, so it kind of left it on like an awkward note for us. So we were talking more, and we were like, oh hey, we should do this again. So I asked him to my winter formal. No, I asked him to homecoming, not winter formal, homecoming. And so typically homecoming is guy ask girls, but since he didn't go to my school anymore, I asked him to take me to my homecoming. Or I was going to, but then my friend Emily came in clutch and was like, no, he can ask you to your homecoming. And I was like, okay. So she texted him and was like, yo, you need to ask Ireland to her homecoming. And he was like, okay. So he came by one night at like 9 o'clock, comes by my house at 9 o'clock, doesn't even knock on the door, just tells me to come outside, texts me and tells me to come outside, has a sign that says, Hoco, ? Like, and I was like, oh, yeah, thanks. And he hugs me and leaves. Like, not, like, that was it. Like, done. The way my school works is that you have to get, like, a form for your, like, person to sign if you're bringing someone to a dance. So I had to give him a form. So I go out of my way to drop it off near his house, like, at his house. Like, he doesn't live that far, but, like, I was doing other stuff, so I didn't have, like, all the time in the world to go, like, give him this form. So I go out of my way to give him this form so that he could fill it out, and then he loses it. He loses the form. So I had to go by the front office to get another one, drive back out of my way to go give it to him again, and then later whenever, he has to get his principal to sign it, which took freaking forever, and then I had to go back to like get it from him to go turn it into my school. I turned it in a day late, which is just awful because he never gave it back to me because he was like, I'm still waiting for my principal to sign it, which is bull crap. Like, you know he didn't. And then you also have to have a picture ID to go along with it, a copy of a photo ID to go with it. Not that freaking hard. Like, literally, you either, like, your school ID, which I know for a fact that he has a school ID because his school requires that you have one. School ID, regular ID, like driver's license, like anything like that. You can get a regular ID, I think, at, like, the age of 13 where we live, I think. Like, not, like, a driver's license, but, like, an actual just kind of, like, identification card thing. Like, you can get that at, like, 13 or whatever. And so he never gives it to me. Like, I've told him multiple times to give him a photocopy. And my dean was emailing me like, oh, like, I realized that your person, that your guest that you're bringing doesn't have a photocopy. And so that makes me look bad because I can't give her a photocopy. So he doesn't give the school a photocopy. And so we get to the door at homecoming, and the lady who's, like, checking people in and their guests in is like, I don't have a photocopy from you, but since you used to go to school here and I know who you are, you're fine. Thankfully, So basically, our school is like weird, and so you basically like once you're there for the dance, it's like a lock-in because you can't like leave until the dance is over, basically. And so he knew this. I had told him this like multiple times, and he ended up leaving early, like literally like running away. But before all this happened, my dad is like a very original man. This is actually my stepdad, but I call him my dad. Because he married my mom when I was like 2, so like I call him my dad. So basically my dad's a very original man, and it was like, I need to meet him. Like, I know who he is, like I met him before, but since he's actually starting to date you now, like I need to meet him. So I'm like, okay. So I text Bob and I'm like, are you coming over here before homecoming, because my dad wants to meet you, and like I wanted to take pictures, like it's my first homecoming ever going with a guy, like I was excited. I really liked him. He tells me that he can't come over because his dad won't drive him. He said that his dad wasn't even going to drive him to the dance. My school is literally like 10 minutes away from my house, so like it's literally not out of the way, especially from where that he was going to be coming from. Like, it's on the way. So I'm like, whatever, he couldn't come. So I told my dad that, and I'm like, Dad, he can't come. Like, he doesn't have a ride. Like, he can't come. His dad won't take him. Like, so then my dad gives me the silent treatment like the entire night and most of the next day, because he's like pissed at me because I didn't stand up for myself. But like, what else was I supposed to do? It's out of my hands. Like, I can't just be like, oh, well, like, I can't, like, you're not going to the dance. Because I had already come so far, and it had already been so stressful on me trying to get the form and, like, all that stuff, and, like, just dealing with my dad, like, bashing him all the time anyways. So I was like, Dad, like, it's out of my hands. And so I went outside to take pictures with, like, my mom and my brother that night, and my dad stayed inside and watched TV. And then I went to, like, hug my dad to leave, and, like, I went to hug him, and he just sat there like this. Like, didn't even hug me back. I was like, bye, Dad, love you. Like, I'm leaving. And he was like, okay. Like, he didn't say love me back. Like, he was pissed at me for, like, not standing up to myself. So that's kind of, like, the first part of the story where I didn't stand up for myself or, like, say anything because I'm, like, too nice to be like, okay, well, you need to get your crap together, boy. So after Bob had left early that night, like, a teacher came up to him and, like, stopped him and was like, who are you? Like, why are you leaving? Like, you can't leave, like, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, yo, like, my dad's here. And just, like, walked away. And, like, the teacher was like, can you do that? Like, so basically, it almost got me in trouble again, like, with the school. Like, then, like I said, I was under the impression that we were going to start dating. And we had also gone to the roller rink together because he came, like, my brother wanted to go one night, and so I invited him to go along with me because I didn't want to go alone. So that was, like, this dance was technically, like, our third date, sort of. So I was like, okay, it's been 3 dates. I know he hasn't officially asked me out, but I was kind of under the impression that we weren't dating other people, at least, you know? I just can't deal with people who, like, date around. Like, I get, like, you're not like tied down to anybody specifically because you're not officially dating anybody, but like at the same time, like, you know, like you can't just like string a bunch of people along until you make your decision. I hadn't heard from Bob in like forever, and he was like texting me one night about how his mom was like very mad at him, and like he was locking himself in his room to like hide from her and everything, and like wasn't really upsetting. But then the next day I didn't hear from him, and I hadn't heard from him for like a while, and it had been like, at this point, I had been like a month since I hadn't heard from him, and that was the last thing that he had said to me. So I was like, did you die? Like, are you good? So then I got out of town with my dad, and I hadn't heard from Bob in like a while and everything, so I was getting kind of worried about him. And so originally when his mom was like going crazy or whatever, like she wasn't that bad, but when that happened, he was like, oh, my mom took my phone away. So I was kind of worried about him, like, but I also figured that his mom probably took his phone away again when I was out of town, but I hadn't heard from him in like a while. It had been like a few months. And so I decided to, like, stalkery-esque, but just kind of like be like go like to social media to see if he was posting, to see if like he was avoiding me or if it was just kind of like he got his phone taken away kind of a thing. And so it ended up being like he was avoiding me. So basically I went on his Facebook and found a bunch of pictures of him with these other girls, which was like fine, like it wasn't that big of a deal, whatever. But like then there started being pictures of like him like hugging them and like having his arm around them and stuff like that, you know, like stuff like was just like kind of flirty. And so I was kind of like, so I was just kind of like, not for me. And so I texted my friend Emily and was like, what the frick is this? Like, what is this? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I thought things were going well. Like, I really liked him. Blah, blah, blah. And she was like, I honestly have no idea. I'm so sorry. She's like, I'm going to kill him. Whatever. And then she texted him a screenshot of the text that we had just exchanged, and he was like, oh, like, I'm so sorry, like, blah, 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 and ended up texting me after he'd apologized to Emily, because Emily was like, no, you need to apologize to her. So texted me and was like, I'm so sorry, like, I don't know, like, what happened, like, I just didn't, like, I didn't want to ruin our friendship or whatever. It was, like, the lamest excuse ever. And so, like, I was like, no, it's fine, whatever, and, like, never text him again. And so, yeah, that was another thing where I just, like, couldn't handle the confrontation because I just wanted to be, not necessarily nice, but I was just kind of, like, at that point, I didn't want to confront him about it because it was just stupid and, like, you know. It's been, like, a year since I've talked to him, and he actually Snapchatted me randomly the other night. But he, like, asked me, he was like, are you okay now? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he was like, yo, like, I just don't know, like, last time we talked, we, like, weren't on good terms. And I'm like, that's been a year ago. I'm fine. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I told him I was fine. And he was like, that's what somebody who's not fine would say. And I hate confrontation. If you like this, please, 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 please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. We do a lot of videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, guys. Love you. Mwah!